The number of threats we face every week is much more than the global average. It's about 2,100 attacks which we face at our critical infrastructure, which is double the global rate.
Our friendly neighbor to the east is expanding the focus on gray zone warfare. So that is a specific area. And if I take an example of a gray zone warfare.
Yeah, we can hear you.
The phone, the AV was absolutely fine. I was not speaking, only my lips were moving. That was an example of how I put everybody in the audiovisual room under pressure and Shoma under pressure without doing anything. This is an example of a gray zone war. This is what China does.
The technology that now is in the field that can be used by agents in order to transfer information, and not only to transfer information, but also to coordinate an operation which is on, shall we say, 3 continents simultaneously. This is something entirely new.
Technology has opened up completely new landscapes of war. And there are 3 elements that describe that landscape. It's asymmetrical, it's anonymous, and it is completely exponential. I'll just give us one fact to think about. Microsoft says that every single day, it looks at 65 trillion signals to look for hostile action. During this Israel-Hamas war, there was an anonymous group that calls themselves predatory sparrows that shut down 70% of Iran's gas stations. We ourselves have been through that with AIMS, with the Aadhaar leak. There are now anonymous players that are able to create havoc. We also have autonomous weapons, which both states and non-state players can use. So this completely new shifting territory of war and military sort of deployment is something that we haven't yet touched upon. So this anonymous asymmetrical war is something that we want to unpack, and to have that, we have 3 fantastic speakers. There's Efraim Halevy, who is the former Mossad chief, and he was the Mossad chief during 9/11, so he has a particular bird's eye view on all of this. Unfortunately, again, he's one of the speakers who's not been able to come in person. He was very much wanting to, but the Israeli embassy asked him not to, given the context. We'd also like to speak with him about the Hamas war and how the sort of technological dome that Israel has built around itself and what it's famed for broke down, how there was an intelligence failure. We also have the serving general, and who's the chief of India's National Cybersecurity, or the coordinator as his official designation is, which is General M.U. Nair. And we have Anshuman Tripathi, who's part of the National Security Advisory Board with a particular focus on quantum, but we're going to have another session on quantum immediately afterwards, but who's part of the overall National Security Board looking at new technologies and how it's changing the landscape. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome all of them on stage. Doing this session with me will be Executive Editor of Lucid Lines, Ritika Passi.
I'll take this one.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us online. Mr. Halevy, it would have been wonderful to have you here, but thank you again for joining us on Zoom. I actually wanted to start with you, General Nair. As I said that, it's just one statistic, but just to repeat it, I don't know if you caught it backstage, that Microsoft speaks about having to triage 65 trillion signals a day to be able to keep off hostile action on the internet. Now, you're running India's national cybersecurity. Tell us about the challenges you face on any given day. And, of course, we want some jaw-drop facts from you. So tell us about something that you've managed to ward off to do this. And how has this landscape made it very difficult to protect India?
Thank you, Shoma. It's wonderful being here. And I think it's probably the first time that a serving officer is speaking to an audience like this. I will start back from what I started. I heard in the previous session, there's a member who spoke about spending 30 years in an organization. I've spent 39 years and I'm getting into my 40th year. I got commissioned into the Indian Army in 1984. So it's my 40th year. And I joined the Corps of Signals where at that point of time, we only had communications either one-to-one, which is on terrestrial media like cables, or if you had to speak on a network, it had to be a radio communication. So the only challenges we faced was monitoring of physical lines, which was a difficult task at that point of time, or we could have somebody, either, monitoring your communications, carrying out deception. So these are the, challenges which we faced in my younger days in service. Come 80s, 90s, we had technology evolving from an analog mode of communications. We changed on to digital mode, and the challenges increased, it actually multiplied over a period of time. And the introduction of cellular services in India in, I think, 1995 changed the dynamics completely. And when we had networks and, the entire communication architecture changed, and we had challenges from multiple areas. Today, we have reached a stage where all of you are probably carrying smartphones here. All of you are carrying devices, multiple devices. We have no ability to see how many devices are working at any point of time. Each of these devices are making connections, sending out signals. She mentioned 6.5 trillion? 65 trillion. So every device you have in this hall is actually, connecting with somebody. It's sending out signals. You have a system of networks. We have over large and big, there are more than 1,000 service providers providing communications. It could be CAT A, B, C in various cities today. So they're all sending these signals all over the country, outside the country. They are sending it through all types of medium, terrestrial, or through radios, the radiating media, through space communications. So the challenges of a device ecosystem, large number of networks. We also have applications which are writing. I'm sure you're all aware of platforms providing you with applications. So each of them are sending out messages, signals, data, and we have a large ecosystem of data storage. I'm sure you know the type of data which is today hosted on the cloud or on premise. It actually multiplies the challenges a whole lot. In addition, you mentioned about the challenges we face. India is probably having the largest growing digital public infrastructure. I think as citizens of our country, we all should be proud of it. And we have the proliferation of both 5G taking place at a rapid pace. So all of them adds to a major challenge where protection of data, which is sensitive, could be affecting each of our citizens is a major challenge. And that's the enormous task which we are supposed to make sure that that we have adequate cybersecurity norms in place to protect our citizens as also our national sovereignty. This is the type of challenge I have, Shoma.
Oh, that's a gigantic landscape of war. And so I have one quick corollary question to that before we draw everyone else into the conversation. And that is that given that the country hasn't been brought to a standstill, does that mean that there aren't that many hostile actors out there? Or does that mean that you have this invisible army and you're doing a really good job of protecting us?
Okay, I missed out the aspect that now I'll just give you an example of what happened during the G20. I'm sure you would have all seen it in open media, online also. So we had a lot of malicious traffic being generated at that point of time flowing into our country, and it was a colossal, it's a mission impossible for all of us to protect this cyberspace of our country. But we did it through a coordinated mechanism where all organs of the government actually functioned and made sure that the cyberspace is protected. This is one example which I just wanted to quote. There are many incidents like this, and there are a large number of both state and non-state actors involved in this game. So cybersecurity is something which we all need to be aware of. We should be the large number of measures which we need to adopt that our cyberspace is protected.
Right. Thank you so much. And actually, General Nair forgot one particular statistic which is quite astounding. You know, he said that this phone is almost more powerful than the battle tanks that the army has. It can do 17 trillion calculations in a second, and it's really like a ticking time bomb that we all hold with us. He said that if you want to track anything that you're doing at any given moment, it's possible through this. You know, when we possess a phone, everything is up there for surveillance. But that particular attack he spoke about, there were 11 lakh per second or per minute attacks that were happening on the.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. Shoma, I'll not get into statistics. I just wanted to tell this audience that, you know, the number of threats we face every week is much more than the global average. It's about 2,100 attacks which we face at our critical infrastructure, which is double the global rate. And this is the challenge which we face. It's coming from multiple directions, but there are mechanisms. Many of these cyber incidents are warded off right at the beginning, so they will not affect citizens or the infrastructure which it's actually protecting. But attacks which go into the nitty-gritties, get into the critical infrastructure is what I just mentioned. And there are multiple types of attacks which happen, and it's a major challenge.
Thank you so much. Ritika, you wanted to open up Anshuman's landscape, and Mr. Halevy, we're just coming to you in a second.
So, cybersecurity aside, technology is considered as a driver of conflict. Don DeLillo, he said, it's his quote, he said that war is the ultimate representation of modern technology. So technology is a driving force, but it's also today become a landscape where a balance, where a power conflict is happening. I want to now turn towards this aspect and ask you, Mr. Tripathi, that we talk about the global order, but now there is another term that needs to be taken into consideration, which is the tech order. And this tech conflict that we've been witnessing, particularly since COVID began, but even before, has basically begun because of the bigger conflict between US and China for global power and global leadership. In such a context, now that has spilled over into technology, where does India locate itself?
Thanks for the question. But firstly, thanks, Shoma, for having me. And kudos to you for having a crowd on the second day of the second half of the event. Everyone here, a round of applause for yourself. Thanks for being here. Technology order, absolutely true. India ranks one of the topmost levels. The first thing I would say is, and I've said this before in many of my speeches before, technology, one of the fundamental ones is semiconductors. Now, no matter where is a semiconductor manufacturing fab or a design center in the world, we can guarantee you there's an Indian engineer who is doing the operations and the design and the research or the operations in that lab or in the design center. That is the quality, that is the volume of technology, human resource that India is producing. And that's an independent variable. Everything flows from there. Now, if you see, and I said semiconductors is a foundational technology, if I usually like to do this, like if you take this room, and we were in our previous berths, and Shoma was doing this event in 1924, 100 years ago, what would be different in this room today? The IT won't be there, that's semiconductors. We'd be having similar kind of architecture, a room, furniture, similar. We would not be typing onto our computers. We might have typewriters, or we would have had handwriting. Handwriting is gone now. We're only typing. All that is built on semiconductors. Clothes. What is different? only one thing between then, or even before that, Egyptian cotton and now? Polyester yarn. Polyester yarn, computational simulations help you make it. So there's a long list, and I can continue. Semiconductors is a foundational technology, and so is AI. Those two is where India is making a strong amount of focus.
So, when you said that India is right at the top of the tech order, or it's among the top countries, I'd like to counter that by asking or presenting a couple of facts, even when it comes to chips. In fact, Rajan Anandan, in his session, he mentioned that India accounts for 30% of semiconductor demand, but does not actually make any in-house. And the AI mission, I believe, the semiconductor mission, I believe, began a couple of years ago. It was announced by the government, and India still hasn't been able to set up a semiconductor facility in-house. So what then qualifies India to play in this tech game that we're witnessing?
Good question. Let me correct you on a few things. Firstly, India has a semiconductor fab.
At Mohali, yes.
At Mohali. And another one down south for compound semiconductors. Since 1990s, when we had the Pokhran II and we had embargoes, we could not import a lot of semiconductors, but for our strategic sector, we needed chips. We set up our own, and we are proud, and I'm proud to share, there are Indian chips which have gone to space. There are not that many fabs in the world which can take pride and say their chips are sitting on Mars or the moon. Indian chips from semiconductor complex Mohali have made all the way there. Now, some might say, yeah, absolutely. We've been doing it for quite a long time. We have compound semiconductors which go into the radars which are used on the LCA and other fighter jets. So it was a requirement. And yes, war, adversity is the mother of invention. We were put in a position where we had an embargo, and we had these big programs running, and we needed to support them with chips. We made them in-house. Then you might say they're not the latest. Well, let me assure you, the world over, we are conservative when we go into outer space. You don't want to send a chip on a satellite, on a rocket to Mars, and then realize there was a bug. And he said, sorry, sir, I kind of left a bug in there. You want to be rock solid sure. So we always use a little data technology. And as General I just mentioned, yes, iPhone is much better, but a lot of the strategic infrastructure still runs on technology which is well proven.
So I'm just going to draw Mr. Halevy into the conversation. Mr. Halevy, I just want to set the framework for this, though we will ask some questions about the Israel-Hamas war that's ongoing. But Mr. Halevy did ask me not to go deeply into that because that's a whole other conference on its own. So we will touch upon that, but if you don't find the in-depth conversation that it deserves, then please understand that that's not the framework of the conference. So, Mr. Halevy, as you said, you were the Mossad chief during 9/11. You've been at the cutting edge of, these changing technologies for the better part of 25 years. And Israel is almost synonymous with technological defense in particular. So very quickly first, what have you seen really change in these 20 years? What is the absolute cutting edge technological prowess that Israel has and the challenge that Israel faces? And the fact that you all had the dome, the Iron Dome, but that could be penetrated by Hamas warriors that do not have the level of technology you do, but could penetrate it. How did the famed Israeli surveillance structure break down?
Well, that's short order within minutes. First of all, I'd like to say that I entered ACAC 60 years ago. I entered Israel-Palestine 61, and I left it in 1995. But I came back, recalled to become head of the United States up here, leading into 2002. And there's a total different scene where we began, and it was an absolutely living things that we did. And when we went with technology to be a layer in intelligence, and it is no, shall we say, not simply a side effect of all this, that ultimately the intelligence institute have been playing the role far beyond the role that they have played before. If today's list there is a large generations of negotiations between Israel and Hamas about how to fix the war to win and to release the over 200 abducted into the non-combatant booklet in the hands of the Hamas. It is the head of the CIA from Washington, who is spending his time in the TT trying to settle this problem. Because ultimately, intelligence more than ever before has become a very, very important player. And I'll give one more example, which I think is also and is not even a great important, and that is in the war between Israel and Russia, in an effort to convey President Zelensky from launching using the sword into the brave. The President of the United States sent the head of the CIA, not an adequate, although he is relatively a but he, in his role as the CIA, to meet the pussy all the way over in the guy, and to tell you exactly how you really the war will begin. We're called bubbles based information he already had about what Putin was able to do and what he was not able to.
Because this is also something which is of great importance. And then there is a third example. That is the example of Libya, when it became known that Gaddafi, who was the master of Libya, was developing a nuclear capability, a military nuclear capability. The negotiations which took place between him and the world were between him and the heads of the British and American intelligence services together. And they went to him and to see him in Libya. And they afterwards, in the end, were able to prevail on him to more or less put aside his entire capability and to dismantle it and to enable him to get an assurance that he would not be attacked in the end, but he was in the end unfortunately attacked, and this was a very unpleasant result of this move. What I'm saying is that intelligence has become a major player all along, and it will continue to be so. And intelligence today is not only human intelligence, although the original aspect of human intelligence, the recruitment of human people as agents, this is still a very strong element. But the technology that now is in the field that can be used by agents in order to transfer information, and not only to transfer information, but also to coordinate an operation which is on, shall we say, 3 continents simultaneously. This is something entirely new, which is the result of technology of today.
Right. Mr. Halevy, I was saying that to narrow this down, we've kind of picked 3 words: anonymous, autonomous, and asymmetrical. It's very, interesting is the wrong word. Disturbingly, 9/11 was you said almost perhaps the first technological war, because when you found out, when you all investigated it, you found that the command center of the 9/11 attack was really in Germany, and that everything had been coordinated from Germany. With that knowledge, and I'm sure given the closeness that the US and Israel share, that must have been information you shared with the US. would you share with us today why, despite that knowledge, it ended up being that Afghanistan and Iraq were then attacked rather than just dismantling the command center in Germany?
I think that the events began to, shall we say, to proliferate around the world. And it became a very, very easy matter to coordinate operations from various places far away from the area of action. We have the 9/11. I remember sitting across the Prime Minister of Israel, Sharon, and suddenly somebody brought in a piece of paper and he read it and he said to me, you have to go back to your office immediately because the world is now as a whole in a crisis, the like of which it has never been before. But this was not the only event. There was an event before that in which 2 American embassies were destroyed within minutes, one in Nairobi and the other in Dar es Salaam. And the coordination between these operations also were not carried out on the spot. And communications and the possibility of using the communications that now exist around the world. There's no place in the world today where you don't have possibility of international communications. That was not the case in the past. And I think one thing, of course, is very important in this area, because we are now facing the possibility not only of what happened in Gaza, which we'll discuss at your wish, but I think that we are now going to face the possibility of a new world war, a third world war. And I bring to your attention this book, which I am holding in front of me, which is called 2034. That's the name of the book. It's a book which was published a year ago in the United States. It was written by Admiral Stavridis, who was the former commander-in-chief of NATO and was a 4-star admiral in the United States. He later became a dean of law in a university in the United States. And he, together with another man called Elliot Ackerman, have shown how in the year 2034, which is 10 years from now, there will be a war which will probably involve countries in many places which are thousands of miles away. This book has been highly recommended. It's a book, by the way, which gives a very, very interesting picture of the role of an Indian figure who was able to avert an ever greater disaster than the initial disaster which actually happened, which was indeed the outbreak of a nuclear war in 2034. How to bring a nuclear war to the end. And it was an Indian figure who is, as I said, extremely important and very, very
Who is that?
unbelievably powerful inside India, who was able.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to cut you, Mr. Halevy. Since you're telling us something, do tell us who is this Indian that stopped a nuclear war?
It's not a person who is actually alive. It's a fictitious figure. It's not somebody who is actually alive. This is not. This is all. This book is pure.
It's a projected. Okay, I couldn't hear that. I thought
it's a book about an event which never took place, but it shows what people can do and what very important go-betweens can avert.
Right. I'm going to. Did you have a question to ask?
No, I just said what he means is a placeholder, and that goes into what you were saying. India is spirit to be playing a very significant role going forward.
As a mediator, or just like leading the technologies that can stop this? So, when you said as a go-between, it's an Indian that's a go-between warring countries, or was it a particular technology? Even as a fictitious projected future, what was it? Was it India's geopolitical importance or India's technological advancement? Mr. Halevy?
You're asking me? No, it was not the result of technological advancement. It was the capability of an Indian figure to be able to maneuver the parties, which included China on the one hand, Russia on the second hand, the United States on the third hand, and it was an act in which he brought about the release of a hostage who was taken by the Iranians in the Persian Gulf. That was the initial event which is described in the book. As I said, it's fiction,
Yeah,
but it is
sorry,
fiction
I
which
missed that.
is probably...
I'm sorry to cut in, Mr. Halevy. It's just that we are short on time. There's a whole treasury of information to unfold here. I wanted to ask you before drawing the other, General and Mr. Tripathi back into the conversation.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Now, yes, yes.
I'm sorry.
I hear you now.
Yes. I was saying that, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into the realm of fiction because there's too much reality to unpack still. That is there any understanding about how the Iron Dome broke down? Is it that there's too much reliance on technological surveillance now, and there's something to be said about still having human surveillance on ground? Is there a kind of hubris around technology, was one question. And two, that, in this war, which is devastating from all sides, and definitely October 7th was, very, very barbaric and difficult for everybody, certainly Israel. But the retaliation has also been a strafing of an entire society. So a country that's capable of precision technologies, capable of such detailed surveillance, why is it that Israel would not retaliate with taking down particular Hamas leaders, but has gone in for a kind of slash and burn retaliation for what happened in October 7th? As I said, I'm staying out of the geopolitical discussion, but just from a purely technological prowess, do you have the prowess to do that or not?
I think this was an intelligence failure, the like of which we had 50 years before, in 1973, when we had a war, a Middle East war, with different players, of course, in one way, but with senior powers, including Russia and the United States, playing a role, military role in the fighting in '73, or at least a threat of a nuclear war as it was developing towards the end of the 1973 war. But here, this is a different situation, and it was an intelligence failure of Israel of the magnitude even greater than the one we had in 1973. And this is now being investigated. Every day there is new revelations coming out of what was happening before the war actually broke out. But obviously this, as I said, was a unique event as well. Now, whether Israel retaliation was the right thing to do or not, I don't want to express a very detailed opinion on this, but I will say that a week after the war began, I published an article in the London Times, in which I expressed the view that it would be a major mistake to conduct what they call the territorial maneuver, which is a term in military warfare, which means to say that if you carry out such a maneuver, your aim is not only to destroy the military capability of your enemy, but also to bring him to a point where his wish to continue the war is no longer there. In these terms, we have not achieved the result which this maneuver was supposed to bring about. But the war is not yet over, and the war now is proceeding in the north, the center, and the south of the Gaza Strip. And we will see whether the current negotiations which are going on for exchange of prisoners will be the preliminary step in gradually bringing the war to an end. By the way, here again, the United States is playing a very, very key role. The head of the CIA, Bill Burns, who I happen to know from the past, he was ambassador to Jordan when I was in charge of the
Halevy, I'm going
secret
to
peace
just have...
negotiations with King Hussein. He is now involved in this. And again, this is intelligence being involved, not in how to win a war, but how to bring a war to an end.
Right. I'm just going to draw you both back into, and I'm just going to share one little detail which Mr. Halevy had shared earlier. It's interesting because he said there were actually women soldiers, warriors, informers on the Gaza border that kept trying to tell the Israeli establishment and intelligence that there was unusual activity building up. But I'm using the phrase, Mr. Halevy, that it was the hubris of technology, that the women were completely ignored by those who are running the establishment. And so a warning that could have possibly stopped October 7th, and then this devastating impact after that on the people of Palestine, failed on that turn of intelligence which was not taken seriously. So I just wanted to put that on the table. General Nair, since you have Mr. Halevy on the screen, and India and Israel is building up very close relations particularly on technology and military use. Would you share with us what is the particular technology transfer that we've received from Israel? And is there any that India has passed on to Israel?
As part of our capability building measures, we have had many nations whom we had interaction with on technology absorption. So one of the countries which we have approached or we shared their expertise is Israel. So also so many countries. So many of these technologies are evaluated and used only if they are found suitable. But as Mr. Anshuman just mentioned earlier, we have the technology prowess today in our country to actually develop these capabilities in-house. The startup ecosystem which we have is extremely vibrant, and it gives us a lot of hope for future, where you find that many of these technologies are developed through Indian expertise outside. So Israel definitely has been one of the key countries which have been giving us a lot of technical
there's no point having you on stage and you telling us generic things which we know. You have to tell us some technology that we've got from Israel or that you have given to Israel.
No, they have been helping us on electronic warfare. Definitely, that some, the electronic warfare systems, the radios of yesteryears, they all actually
radios of yesteryears, they are passing on old technology to us.
No, yesteryears implies that what we used to use earlier. But today we have our own indigenous radios which have been developed. The software-defined radios are developed in-house today. So we had got their expertise at some point of time. Right. So that's what I just wanted to point out.
Right. So just, yes.
Can I add to that? There are a lot of technologies that we work with in Israel. One, on the semiconductor side, the fab that we have in Mohali has a lot of collaboration technology from Israel. Tower Semiconductors is one of the companies in Israel, which we are actually working with. There are a lot of other technologies which have been developed in Israel, but they might not have seen the exposure to a country of our size for use and the variety of ways in which it can be utilized. So we have strong collaboration with them, and also through the Make in India program, where a lot of the collaboration is happening, where a lot of other factors have been brought in, and what if it was used in this scenario, what it was used in that scenario to make it more robust.
Right.
Shoma, I just want to also add on that we try and template regions, geographies. Now, if you look at the geography of Israel or Palestine, the border there, and what exists in Israel, in Russia, Ukraine, it's completely different from what we have along our northern borders. So technology has its limitations when it's applied across geographical areas. There's something which we need to factor in.
Right. That's a very interesting observation you made, because I was going to ask you the next question. Just as I was asking Mr. Halevy, how did they have such an intelligence breakdown? Given the kind of satellite detail, I can see my house in Uttarakhand to this last detail. How is it that the Chinese were able to come into India with the massive intelligence structures we have, with satellites in the sky? How did we have such a big intelligence failure?
Shoma, I'm the Cybersecurity Coordinator, and that intelligence is not my domain of expertise. But notwithstanding that, there are, as I had mentioned, every region has different geographies. The cloud cover that exists along our northern borders is something which we have been it's a major challenge which we've not been able to tackle, despite the fact that we have multiple satellite, which are actually employed through all over, through international cooperation. We get a lot of imagery, but we still have challenges in terms of weather. We have heavy fog season when, though there are today technology available to see through such phenomenon too, but there are challenges. So this could be one of the reasons why we have some of the gaps in our intelligence, but let me assure you that there are a lot of technological developments which have taken place all in the army today. In fact, you would have seen that every day there is some new technology being absorbed as part of our capability building measures. So I think that, let's not look at what happened yesteryears. I think we should look forward, and there's a lot of hope, and I'm sure our borders are well protected. And I think as a serving officer, I'd like to assure you, each one of you here, that there is not going to be any violation of our territorial integrity. That's something I think we should all be proud of, our armed forces.
No, that's absolutely.
Can I add to that a
yes.
little bit? We just finished the Raisina dialogue 2 days ago, and the CDS, Respected General, talked about this point that our friendly neighbor to the east is expanding the focus on gray zone warfare. So that is a specific area. And if I take an example of a gray zone warfare.
Yeah, we can hear you.
The AV was absolutely fine. I was not speaking, only my lips were moving. That was an example of how I put everybody in the audiovisual room under pressure and Shoma under pressure without doing anything. This is an example of a gray zone war. This is what China does in many situations. In the South China Sea, in interactions with us, that is what is the focus, was the answer to the question that you had.
Right. I just wanted to share, since you did this, that Mr. Tripathi speaks in 8 or 9 languages. So I think he's more than just in the National Security Advisory Board. He's not revealing who he really is. But that bit of psych war was very psyching, I have to say. But before you go, we're going to ask you to mimic, at least the 7 languages, the 7 avatars that you wear.
I think your notes got confused. That was Sonu Nigam yesterday.
Well, anyway,
He does this for entertainment. Whatever we do is to keep you safe.
Right. Did you have a question?
I did. So sorry, I misspoke. What I meant to say was that since the semiconductor mission was announced, we haven't established any new foundries. But anyway, I think I want to bring it back, actually, the chips and the cyber warfare, into saying if this is now the new command center, then this is a commercial entity. And that I think that is the National Security Council, as the National Security Advisory Board, also thinking about the impact of commercial technologies and the role that India is playing, how much it's manufacturing, how much it's assembling. We've all heard the news in recent times that India is now has increased its exports of mobile technology, except we're mostly still assembling them and not manufacturing them. So just as a question, if the commercial aspect of technology is something that is in consideration by the Indian government.
Oh, absolutely. We are looking at, manufacturing for India and for abroad. We are looking at a lot of aspects to fill in from the Indian perspective. But I think a better way to answer for this forum would be to look at it from a national security and an asymmetric warfare perspective. Today, a $400 drone can destroy a $1 million tank, which we are seeing in the situation of Ukraine and all. These technologies which are coming in, how well can we leverage in our theaters of engagement? And also, how do we protect ourselves where they are brought into the theater by non-state actors? Because our situations, we have a lot more non-state actors to play with. Those are areas which I think is where we have a lot more focus right now from a national security point of view perspective. But on the larger commercial angle, obviously, the whole PLI program and the DLI program and all that stuff that we've been talking about in the past 2 days, there's a juggernaut focus. I like to use the word juggernaut because India's size and scale does not compare to anything else. We had somebody talk yesterday and comparing India to Europe. Now, if my geography serves me right, Europe is a continent, India is a country. So we have a size where we are taking cudgels with or comparing ourselves with a full continent. So we are doing multiple activities, and you can't just say one. We are making a cell phone. We are doing so many technologies. If I start listing out, we know we are running out of time. Yeah.
So, Mr. Halevy, I'm just going to do one quick question to you and then to General Nair. You know, I asked you about the way Israel deploys technologies, and I asked you about the precision technology. I was reading on the IDF website itself that in this Hamas war, there's a deployment of an AI tool called Hasbora, which is the gospel. And it is being used to generate, it literally uses the word products, for killing. And that it is able to produce these products or identify these products faster than in any other way. So I wanted to ask you, as these technologies get more powerful, is there any discussion at all about there's a great wound in the Israeli psyche from history. There's a great sense of wound right now in the immediate context. And then you have this extremely powerful technology that's literally picking out people as products. Is there any check and measure on how that technology will be deployed? What's the culture within that technology will be deployed was one question. And the second was that it's, in this new era of post-truth where nobody believes anybody else, there's a huge argument about whether 30,000 Palestinians have been killed or not. And anybody who's from Israel or from, empathetic, and actually even those who are empathetic to Israel, there's basically a disagreement whether this many people are being killed. So my question to you is that with this level of technology available, if you don't believe that 35,000 Palestinians have been killed, what is the number that has been killed? If you're claiming that 40% Hamas have been killed, who are they? If you can attack an ambulance saying that there's a Hamas operative inside and you have that level of eye on moving object, why don't we have numbers that we can agree on, So would you take on some of those questions? How is Hasbora being used? Is there a culture around which certain technology can be used or not used? And do you have precision figures on how many people have died in Palestine, which, you could put out objectively and empirically?
I am not aware that we have a very clear idea of the number of fatalities on the Hamas side. But what I will say are three things. First of all, the use of hospitals for military purposes, both to have equipment stored there, ammunition stored there, and underground tunneling under the hospitals, which are used also for keeping hostages and also for keeping certain types of military equipment. The mix between the medical field and the war on part of the Hamas has been against all the rules of international law. And in Israel, as far as Israel is concerned, it has been very careful on how it has entered hospitals and how it has dealt with these stocks of arms that they found, and also a lot of intelligence, by the way, and documentation. So now, as far as figures are concerned, we lost about 1,500 people the first few hours because we were surprised. And it is also true that there was early warning on behalf of those who were girl soldiers who were had the task of reviewing the scene 24/7, and they were reporting that they were seeing activity on the other side of the border in the south of the country, and it looks as if there's something very unusual is happening. And unfortunately, they were reprimanded for reporting what they reported, and in one or two instances were threatened with court-martials if they continue to press on these issues. These are matters which are now going to be examined in a judicial form, over the months to come after the hostilities are ultimately come to an end. And of course, the question is, which hostilities will come to an end? One thing
Halevy,
which we have not been able to fathom at the moment is that much of the equipment that the Hamas has been using is equipment which they have produced in the Gaza Strip with equipment which somehow they were able to bring in from outside, and they had a manufacturing element, and they were manufacturing equipment with a very, very high quality, which astounded us. How this equipment, not the military equipment, but how they were able to create virtual factories of producing equipment, how they were able to smuggle these elements and where it came from is still a big question mark, which we do not have an answer for. One other thing I want to say is, and two seconds. I think that we will not in any way be active in trying to prevent information from coming out to the public. The public in Israel wants to have the full truth about what has happened and where there has been an intelligence failure, where not. And also the question of what the future of Gaza will be, who will be in charge of Gaza, who will be the authority in Gaza. All these are questions which are far from having been determined. And we will not be the only people to determine what will be the future of Gaza.
I was just trying to cut in because, you know, if we bring up about who will be the authority, who will be the post-war scenario, that has to then take us into a political conversation, which we haven't really gone into over here. I'm just, you know, with having all of you here, I just want to put on the table that you didn't answer my question about, you know, whether there's a culture or protocol in terms of how technologies will be used against civilian populations. I'm just going to leave with one question to all of you. You know, there was an autonomous question. Will you answer, Mr. Halevy? You're the Mossad, former Mossad chief. You've got to give us some information that is Israel already using autonomous weapons, you know, which there's a gamification of war. Is there any discussion about the psyche of war when, you know, you can kill people just pressing buttons on a computer is different from putting feet on ground for, you know, body-to-body combat? Is there any thinking about all these things within the Israeli establishment? And there was a story that an Iranian scientist was killed by a robotic, autonomous sniper. Will you at least let us know whether that was true or not?
Well, Iran is a different story. And how Iranians were killed one way or another is beyond the area that I would like to cover today. But what I would like to say is that as far as Iran is concerned, I think the Iranians are definitely not interested in becoming involved in this war. And although they are giving support in the north of the country to what they call the Hezbollah, which is in Lebanon and partly in Syria, it is a limited support, and there's clear intention on the part of Iranians not to become involved in the Gaza war. And that is, by the way, a sign, a positive sign in terms of the regional aspects of this war. As far as the other questions you have asked about how all these events are going to be treated in the International Court of Justice, which has been dealing with this a few weeks ago. And there was a petition there by South Africa that the court should order a cessation of hostilities. And the court did not decide to order Israel to end the war and to stop the war from proceeding.
Mr. Halevy, we'll leave it there. I just want to put on record that you did not answer us as a security chief. You were answering us as a diplomat, but we'll just leave it over there. One quick question to both of you. which is that China manufactures a lot of the things that we're using. Even while we consider them an adversarial country, exports has gone up by 100%. And another general, who I won't name, was saying that there's actually a lot of vulnerability to India's key structures, key systemic structures, that is very vulnerable to China. If they wanted to shut us off, they could, from railways to, many, many crucial infrastructural things. So, General Nair, would you take that question? And Anshuman,
thank you. Thank you, Shoma. Actually, supply chain infection is one of the significant aspects which impacts on cybersecurity. So we're trying to strengthen the supply chain mechanism by having indigenous production first, and secondly, having only equipment systems, that is hardware, software, in our telecom networks. We have actually had some impact. So we're going to have this ecosystem all over the country where we'll ensure that only trusted products from trusted sources are put into these networks and our critical systems. So that's what we are endeavoring to do. So this will mitigate quite a few of the cybersecurity vulnerabilities.
Anshuman, any last words?
I think what he said is perfectly true.
I just want to correct myself. It's not 100% gone up in exports, but imports.
Yeah, so we do a lot of imports from China on the civilian sector side, and that's pure economics plays into the picture. But I would like to add, overall, geopolitical economics always plays a role. I gave the example at the starting 100 years. 100 years ago, there were more electric vehicles on the road than gasoline vehicles. In fact, the time when Henry Ford made the T-model Ford, his own wife, Clara Ford, did not like the gasoline vehicle. She preferred to drive an electric vehicle from Detroit Electric. So a lot of these parameters, they come in and go out. It took 100 years for electric vehicles to come back into the mainstream. And they are still not that much better than what they were 100 years ago. Detroit Electric was 25 miles per hour and 80 kilometers range. So these things, are dynamic in nature, and as we find a hole, we plug it, and we are working Make in India, and I hope a lot of people here would become entrepreneurs. I met a lot of entrepreneurs over the last 2 days, and more power to you, and we hope you make India a strong nation along with us.
Thank you very much. On that note, we'll have to end it. I just want to say thank you, General Nair. Given the kind of very bewildering landscape of war, the point you were making that we continue to live in peace without having things breaking down all the time is with your invisible. You said there are a lot of volunteers, young volunteers in India who help you keep us cyber safe. And of course, you're thinking strategically. Mr. Halevy, thank you very much for being as candid as is possible under your role. And to all of you, thank you for at least these little windows into the security establishment.
Thank you.